Okay, hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Knowledge Session 6. I think we shall start because we are like 16 minutes late. I'll introduce myself first. My name is Gerald. I am the Executive Director for EB Impact. We are a Singapore-registered nonprofit that focuses on delivering youth and education programs in Singapore and Asia. And I'm joined with some really special panelists here. We've got Alex Rendell. Some of you who were over at the other hall would have watched him perform. Yes, well done. Wonderful performance. Alex is the Goodwill Ambassador for UNEP. He is also an award-winning actor, and he's actually the first Goodwill Ambassador of the United Nations Environment Programme. And he's also the CEO of the Environmental Education Center, the EEC, in which he co-founded back in 2015. So we'll find out more about that during this panel. We also have Lam Wan Chi. She is a youth climate ambassador from Save the Children Hong Kong, and she's participated in global campaigns such as Generation Hope, calling for urgent action on the climate crisis to create a safe, healthy future for children. And we also have Taskin Rahman. He is the head of advocacy and campaigns at Save the Children, so he not only looks after Hong Kong, but whole of Asia, right? Yeah, that's right. So his work really revolves around working closely with children and young people and ensuring that they have a voice and a seat in policy discussions that will impact their lives. And last but not least, we have Eiren. She is the spokesperson for the regional coordinator for National Capital Regional Chapter, Youth Advocates for Climate Action Philippines. She is a climate justice activist and an aspiring marine biologist from the Philippines. Can we all give a round of applause to welcome our panelists? Thank you. Okay, so this session is really about exploring how youth leadership can be enhanced with the power of media for social and environmental change. Now, I know some of us would have just had our lunch, so let's take part in this activity together, shall we? So what we need you to do is to scan the QR code to take part in this Slido. I think it's coming up soon. There we go, yeah. So scan the QR code, right? And let us know, where do you receive news or stories about plastic pollution issues and solutions? Let's take a few minutes to do this. Now, the answer that's repeated the most will be the biggest word, I think. Okay, we've got Facebook, Instagram, just as I suspected, right, Eiren? Okay, social media, yes. That's still the biggest. Eco-business, fantastic. Yes, read eco-business. Okay, so we can see that, a lot of us actually get our news from online platforms, right? Especially social media. And I mean, social media as well as youths, right? We're so intricately linked together. So many media platforms, new media platforms, TikTok. I mean, I don't know anything about TikTok now, so I don't know whether I can consider myself a youth, but there are all these platforms coming up, right? And so we want to first explore, the importance of youth in creating a change. And let's start off with finding out about, youths who have taken the initiative to become leaders. And some of my panelists here are already, taking initiatives, they're heading organizations. So let's start off with Alex first. Alex, you founded the Environmental Education Center. Could you tell us a little bit more about, what inspired that, what are the steps taken, and what were the positive outcomes from that?
Okay, well, the Environmental Education Center, also known as EEC, was founded in 2015 by myself and 3 other people. And at the time, it was an initiative that we felt that would be very important, because just like a simple concept was, if you want to protect something, you have to love it first. And I felt that I enjoyed I wanted to be part of environmental work at such a young age because I was educated about it. And once you're more educated about it, you realize that education is one form of sustainability. So, and I personally think that it's an area where not many have taken seriously as it should. And the whole idea was that education can lead to solving a lot of the problems that we have today if the education process, if the education sponsorship or the backup there is enough. So we've been doing that for close to 10 years now, and we've had a lot of good results. We've been able to work with schools, whether it's from water management, whether it's for adaptation or understanding the environment. Because like a country like Thailand, and I'm sure it's the same with a lot of countries in Southeast Asia, we are countries that are very dependent on our natural resources in terms of the quality of life. So if our nature goes down, so does the quality of our life. And I feel that the youth are going to be the product of that decline in the long term. So it's very important to get them engaged and get them understanding. And just a couple success cases that I feel from this organization that we've done together is that there's been a lot of students who have started with us, and now they're gone on to university. They've actually, some of them have graduated from university, and now they're finding jobs in the field of sustainability, whether it's becoming marine biologists, whether some like fashion, they want to do sustainable fashion, whether some of them are doing, are taking over their parents' business, their parents' organization, and they become more of a sustainable mentality leader. And also some of the projects we do in schools, we see students who are inspired and they've been educated and they could become leaderships in their own way, influencing their families, influencing their friends. And I just think that by focusing on environmental education, we are slowly creating a whole new generation of environmental conscious people in the public, which I think is something that we should definitely work towards, not on just a national level, but on a global level.
Yeah, I totally agree because, when it comes to education, right, that's the very first step to awareness and then developing that love for it. And therefore, you would then take action to make a change. So thank you very much, Alex, for that. And I wanted to ask Chilam as well, right? You're a 17-year-old student and you've taken part in Generation Hope, which is the campaign. Can you tell us a bit more about that? What was the outcome of that? Yeah.
Hello everyone, and from our Youth Climate Ambassadors experience, many of us contribute to addressing plastic pollution with more access to supporters, as we belong to a big peer group at schools, which also includes many youth. Although today we are better educated by our primary and secondary schools in Hong Kong about the environmental issues than the previous generations, they have environmentally friendly policy to have a green day without aircon in my school. Young people in general like to support ideas from our own generation, but don't like to being told what to do by adults. Fortunately, some schools of our group, there are spaces for us to be environmental leaders, like forming environment club, and they encourage our schoolmates by organizing activities about washing and recycling every drink container. These self-initiated environmentally friendly actions are done in every school day and gradually immerse into the life as habits. Another example is the Generation Hub that we participated. Activities such as movie screening let us gain knowledge and get inspired by some climate advocate sharings, and beach cleaning also forced us to take actions. Some night safari on the wetland allowed us to understand the importance of addressing pollutions to preserve biodiversity. Some SDG games is an interesting way to learn about the balance between environment, social, and economic. After going through this, we proposed 7 solutions to climate change. For our group, we proposed a project to navigate traditional method with tailor for clothes upcycling to minimize waste. As speaker yesterday mentioned, textile industry significantly contribute to plastic pollution. I think youth and we are creative. We are unconstrained by the deep-rooted social norms, and we are a source of innovative energy. So, we can look forward to the future, that current youths develop into adults who have good habits since they're young. Youth taking lead and initiating gradual changes in lives contribute to save and build a generation with hope.
Thank you very much for that. And I think what I got out from what you said just now, an interesting point, was that young people do not like to listen to adults, and that you want to listen to your own peers. And I think that's important. And that's an important point because it means that youths are important in this whole advocacy for preventing plastic pollution and telling their friends about it. So that's important. And let's come to Eiren now, right? Could you tell us a little bit more about your work as well?
So, us from the Youth Advocates for Climate Action Philippines, we focus on organizing the youth. We do a lot of different projects. It could start from having fashion shows. It could be having open mic nights that are all about advocating or at least creating a better awareness. Or actually, it's not about awareness because everybody's already aware, or we all already have some sort of awareness towards the climate crisis. So it's more of giving a name or giving a face to the issues that we are facing. So yeah.
Right. And so when you mentioned giving a name to the issues, could you give us an example of that?
For example, we recently had a fashion show just last week. So the fashion show was supposed to be, it's named as The Horror. It's supposed to show the horrors that we are facing as the youth, so our generation. It's it's about showing them the people as well that are behind, or not behind the climate crisis, but the people who are on the front lines of going against the climate crisis and of course the plastic pollution crisis. So it's about showcasing the different the different communities that we do have. So it's the interconnectedness of the climate crisis to the fishing communities, to the farmers, of course, even to the workers, to the other kinds of sectors that we do have.
Yeah, I like that. And that's, not just about giving them superficial awareness, right? And just showing them really on the ground how that's affecting the communities and how that is related to them as well. So let's move on to the next point. And I want to just speak to Taskin on this, right? And this is about, Taskin about this, and this is about the trends that you currently see. You work with so many children and youths in Asia, in the whole of Asia. That's huge. So what are the current trends amongst youth leaders now? So we know that a lot of youths are now more aware about climate change, right? Plastic pollution. What are the trends in terms of the actions, perhaps, that they've taken?
Yeah, so we work across 17 countries in Asia, but generally about 46 countries around the world. In Asia, we have a network of networks of, let's say, 3,000 young people across the region. But then those networks have more and more people. I would say something like it is possible to reach 50,000 children in a week somehow. In 2022, we did a study on a child hearing project, which included children between, let's say, 14 and 20, children and youth, and wanted to ask them, like, what are some of the things that kind of worries them or excites them. I think what came across is one of the trends is climate anxiety. I think that they feel super climate anxious, but they are also very positive in terms of they have the right motivation for a kind of a better future. They think that certain actions kind of can change the future for them, right? Change the story in 20, 30 years. So in terms of trends, I think we did a social listening study. It's very new. So it has 5 sections. So one of them is, very much related to the inputs that came through, like, where do you consume your news from? And so this is this is mostly from Facebook, Instagram, some websites. And what came out is that there is a huge debate around whether climate change is man-made. Often references are user-generated content like YouTube and Facebook. then 20% of all the conversations on climate coming from people under 30 was on scientific discussions. So sharing links or facts that are coming from scientific discussions. About 20% are from policy related, so mitigation related kind of, wherever a bill is passed, they're kind of sharing with their friends, this and that. And finally, there are lots of other conspiracy theories, about 10%, where people think that this is not a real crisis. This is like a man-made crisis. Like, some people still believe that COVID was not really real, but there is. So the point I'm trying to make is like youth consume a lot of, traditionally, I'm in my 40s, right? So traditionally, I would consume media from newspaper that would have a reporter followed by a commissioning editor. But right now, it's the intermediaries between news producer and consumer is not there. Whoever is producing, it can be consumed by anyone. So there is no fact checking, right? So I think as a result, I think a lot of fake news is very prominent, especially post-crisis. So I think that kind of drives a youth let's say, over anxious at times, given, not a lot of this news is real. In terms of, I think youth, modern day youth are really self-starters. You'd be surprised to know that one of our youth, I think when he did it in 2022, he was only 18. His name is Diwakar Uprethi. He mobilized a group of people to plant 100,000 trees in 5 hours. Yeah, so of course he didn't go from house to house. He was able to mobilize a network that could do it in that speed. I don't think that our organization would be able to do that if the task was given. So they are super motivated. He now runs a campaign called Plastic Man, where he collects plastic from his native town and puts them up as ghosts, so that people really see plastic as a big pollutant, something they need to be scared of. So I think, in short, summarizing what I said, I think the trend is that they're consuming, let's say, news from people than from media outlets. They're taking their own actions, and they're quite motivated.
It's fantastic. I love that 100,000 trees example. It's really making a difference there, using the voice. So I just wanted to ask also, like based on your experience, right, in terms of youths using their voice to advocate, for a plastic-free future, right? How powerful is that, or perhaps what are the challenges compared to other voices in this advocacy space?
Yeah, I think it's a very difficult question. I think. In Asia, I think 19% of the region's population in Asia is youth. 60% of the world's population of the global youth is in Asia. However, children and young people may often feel neglected, as media and governments tend to prioritize experts. Always bring in experts who may not have the direct lived-in experience of any crisis, right? And so I think two things I would like to mention here is there needs to be children and young people's constituency must be represented at all policy discussion levels, plastic, climate crisis overall, right? And I think the amplification of their voice, they're really new. You have to understand it's a very volatile period where, you change school, you change cities, you make new friends. Sometimes you get married, sometimes you get job. A lot happens between, let's say, 16-24 age group, right? So I think whatever they do for a short period of time must be amplified with, influencers, micro-influencers, media. And there, finally, I would say adequate representation needs to be there in policy discussion, as well as, post-crisis, every time the media goes, they want to interview a scientist. I'm not saying they don't need to interview the scientist, but I think it needs to be coupled with people who are within the age group and represents the future of the country.
Yeah, and that's important, right? Because they are the future, right? And they're going to inherit whatever that's left behind by us older people. Yeah, so I think that's important. And I just want to open up to the panel as well, right? Did you face any challenges for yourselves, like gaps, when you tried to make a difference, or just try to get your voice heard, and then you stumbled on some obstacles, and what are they? Anybody? Eiren? Yeah.
Well, as an organizer, one of our biggest gaps or biggest issues was funding. Most of our funders are actually project-based, so we do have a lot of projects, but there are times when we aren't able to do as much as we wanted because of that issue. But we still push through thanks to the help of communities and through other organizers. And moreover, another thing that we've experienced, in addition to what was said about experts and, well, generally older people being more prioritized, is that there is a lot of negativity that does get tied into youth activism or even advocacy, wherein we are often seen as, I don't know, some people say that when you're advocating something that isn't necessarily what is the common thinking, is that we are seen as terrorists or something much more negative, which is obviously not true, because all we wanted to do, or all that we are trying to do, is to work alongside everybody in order to address the plastic crisis and, of course, the climate crisis.
And Sheila, did you face the same thing as well in whatever campaigns that you were part of?
Yeah, there are gaps between adults and youth. First, we may lack of resources in molding public opinion, like financial, technological, and informational. It is hard for us to reach older generations outside the social media. Also, in the aspect of mindset, maybe the public don't take us seriously because of our young age. So, it is a difficult sell for us as young people to adults. Intergenerational collaboration is important to empower us. Mentorship encourages the combination of opinions and efforts of youth and adults. Like us, a group of youth climate ambassadors, we participate in a global campaign, Generation Hope, to raise awareness of climate change. Intergenerational collaboration exists like Save the Children Hong Kong, support us with mentorship, from raising our interest in climate change to having more knowledge to know the impact of our action and to take action. Maybe without the collaboration among different generations, the impact of our solution will be limited to youth. I would like to call upon everyone that we should listen to the environment, but also listen to us, the youth. We should work together. Corporate, government, civil society, researchers, and individuals like adults and youth, reach out to our local environmental groups for some collaborations.
Thank you very much. And yes, Taskin, you wanted to say something.
Short example. This is something we ran at the EPFSD this year earlier. So we gave everyone similar colors. So let's say the 12 colors in a pencil box. So we divided the group two ways, under 20 and over 20. So we gave the over 20 the first chance to draw a village. So that, and the condition was that every color someone uses cannot be used by someone else. So by the time they finished drawing blue skies and green grasses, and whatever was left for the young people, they couldn't draw blue grasses and green green grasses and blue skies because it was already used. So I think sometimes my generation of people, or even older, do not have the imagination of the impact it will leave behind for young people, and that's the kind of gap we live in, because we live very much in the present. Thanks.
And that actually puts things into perspective, right? Yeah. And maybe, Alex, you could share a little bit more, like through your experience, in this whole advocacy space, sustainability space, when it comes to the intergenerational partnership, right? Has there been such a partnership? Has it been successful, unsuccessful? What were the challenges?
I think as time goes by, it's people are beginning to be more open and more supporting. But I definitely would say that there are a lot of challenges doing, especially with advocacy with the youth, education. Like one of the challenges I could think of is that it takes it takes a lot of energy, that's for sure, for the people that are facilitating it. And at the same time, I think that finding a measurement for the success of it is also something that is quite challenging, because if you want funding, they're always going to ask for how can we measure this? How can we use these statistics? How can we claim the statistics that we are contributing to sustainability? When on the other side, if they were to do coral gardening, for instance, or planting trees, that you could just say the amount of trees, and that you could claim that. So I think that that's a bit of a gap, that measurement. And there are certain measurements, like you could do exams before the courses, after the courses, and you could use that. But is that strong enough for an organization or the government to be able to say, hey, yeah, this is something that we need to do? And I think that's one of our biggest challenges, to be, just like you said, like to be taken seriously. That's education is a form of sustainability rather than us having to try and prove it all the time.
Yeah, I think it's the intangibles that can be measured, right?
Yeah.
That you're mentioning. So being more flexible, I guess, with the funding model might be a good option, you know, to push and advocate for the space. And one more question for you, Taskin, right? I think you focus on putting children at the table where discussions are made, you know, in terms of policies. How do you get the older people or the governments, right, corporations, to take them seriously or to take their views seriously?
I mean, we first is coverage. Our first kind of intervention is to make sure that there is adequate representation. I think seriousness is kind of, you know, how seriously. I mean, when I was working in public health, it was incredibly difficult because, you know, medical professionals would not consider non-medical advice, and there was a lot of debate. But I think in the climate space it's slightly more open, because I think the number of people advocating on climate, from, like, you know, Greta kind of took the climate strike, and they kind of feel the pressure and the need. But I have to also say that the language of the Gen Z and the language of the policymakers is very, very different, you know. So sometimes, while they want to take their opinion seriously, sometimes I think there is a cognitive dissonance in what the young people are saying versus what the policymakers understand. Also, as I think some of them said, that they don't want to be told what to do. I think governments are large bureaucracies that work with a system, but young people are not always adhering to the systematic approach. They want things, they want instant gratification from social media. I think that is a challenge. But what we do is we do pre-consultations, making sure that the questions that the government wants to listen to is already discussed, and more comprehensive answers produced for those kind of interactions.
Right, so more of like a guided sort of intervention, right?
Yeah, more of, for ASEAN environmental declaration that is being worked on. In 7 countries, we have done 3 consultations before preparing a report that would be present in person. So sometimes the conversation may not be as fruitful if it is uninformed. So rather we do the consultation, bring the children, and present the report.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Taskin. So now we'll move on to the point on the role of the media in amplifying voices, right, that drive change. And I think I'll automatically go to Alex first on this, because you are a media personality yourself. You've used the media to advocate change. But I think the question is, how do, you know, youths in general, you know, people who are not personalities themselves, actually tap on the power of social media or the media platforms that they have access to advocate change?
I think everybody can be an advocate in their own way, and I think that everyone has their own space. Everyone is entitled to their own social media platforms, but I think that the way that the message is delivered is a very, very important aspect to it. Like in our generation, we would be watching like documentaries, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour. But in the newer generation, if you don't get their attention in 3 seconds, they're just going to swipe away. So in order for us to be able to get that message, we have to understand the behavior. Because as working in the entertainment industry myself, there's a lot of the general way of telling a story, which is not taking account of the behavior of the younger people. And if we want to get people engaged, it has to be more entertaining than educating. So I think that edutainment is a good word that it can really help. And what I mean by that is you could use your platform, make it fun, make it cool, make it hip, make it current, make it in the way that you feel is most comfortable, and you're already putting that just extra little knowledge in your little community of followers or your social media circle.
Something that can connect with your audience, right?
Yeah.
I think that's most important. And maybe Sheila could share, like, do you use social media to advocate, and what do you specifically do?
Yeah, Gen Z have social media accounts and we spend hours and hours scrolling reels and posts. And if social media posts only with knowledge, it is ineffective in motivating us to take actions. Online challenges and texts are great tools for us to turning audience knowledge into practical actions, making it fun and remarkable for people to have first-hand experience. For example, on Facebook or IG, we can start challenges where audience challenge themselves to either go with the plastic items or replace item with alternatives. Or we can invite famous people to film reels about a week without buying drinks in plastic bottles, or to spend a month having drinks with reusable coffee cups. And every step counts. Let us start to engage other for actions, and we can advocate reduction of plastic usage through social media platforms and other any means you can imagine.
I like that. It's kind of like gamifying this whole, advocacy space. It's interesting. And Eiren, yourself, which platforms do you use? Instagram, TikTok?
I personally use only the basics, so Facebook and Instagram, but our organization does employ all of the major ones, so TikTok, Facebook, everything. And one thing that's also important is, aside from educating, is that we also have to ensure that the message that we are giving is one that is grounded from our grassroots, because it's important that the message that we are giving across is a message that is coming from the voices that need to be heard the most. So these comes from our basic sectors, from, as I mentioned earlier, our fisher folk, the urban poor, the poor, and just all other sectors that you can think of. Everybody that has a voice that isn't necessarily being heard or isn't being amplified is something that we can work into our social media posts. So just like what was said earlier, make it trendy, make it hip, but also keep it grounded, so that we are ensuring that the information we're giving isn't something that is just being thrown away. We're ensuring that it is something that, once digested by the people, by the audience, is that it's not just something that enters one ear and then passes through the other, but it's something that they're able to think about afterwards.
Right, that's a very good point. I think, instead, it's not just about the superficial type of engagement. I think you have to think about the depth, right, of engagement and the message that you're trying to put out there. So that's a good point to take note of. And I just want to open this question to the panel, right? Please feel free to answer this. But this question is that some youths are, and we know that youths are more aware now about climate change, but for some of them, or maybe a majority of them, they might feel like this is something that is out of my hands, beyond my pay grade or beyond my age grade, right? So it should be done by the governments, or it should be done by should be solved by the governments or the corporations. What would you do? What would be the angle of messaging, right, that you would take to tell them that, hey, no, you can take action as well? Yeah. Anybody? Alex, maybe, since I'm looking at you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the message is that everyone has to contribute. Like, if anybody's ever watched this documentary on Netflix, it's about day zero. Day zero was a day where people would count backwards, and then there will be no more water usage in certain countries around the world. And once the government announced that, day zero was pushed back by years because everybody contributed and everybody saved water. So the point is that if everybody has the mentality where small changes can make a change, collectively that's a big change. We've seen that in the pandemic. We've seen that in a lot of serious issues around the world, that if everybody contributes, the impact is absolutely huge. So I think that angle would be most appropriate in tackling climate change at this point.
Right, so really telling them that every single step counts, right? Every single action counts, and that they should take the action, right? Eiren,
Definitely,
yourself?
yeah.
For me, well, just to add to what was said, because that was very clearly said about what the importance of collective action. So while you are able to do great things individually, you can do even more greater things when you work with people, especially a group of people that are as motivated, are as passionate as you are about the topic or about the advocacy that you are fighting for. And again, I would also really like to express the importance of having the perspective of the grassroots perspective, because if when we're building a story, or when we're building a story, we want to ensure that it is a story that is reflected by everybody, not just by a simple few. And I think a good a good angle that we use is that we are all experiencing the climate or the plastic crisis. We're all affected by it one way or another. Some are more affected than others, and some are less affected. But the the bottom line is that we are all experiencing it. And if we believe that other people can fix this and not us, then maybe we should have already solved this crisis years ago. And obviously that's not the case. So it's really up to us, especially the youth, to do something, because again, we are the inheritors of our planet, and we will not inherit a dead planet.
Thank you very much. And would you like to add anything to that? Yeah.
I think in last year, 2023, air pollution is something that affects everyone, but it's difficult to explain. So some of our youth in Nepal, they made a big bear, white polar bear, big one, like about 30 feet in height, and they then put it on the street through which the PM goes to work. So over time, the bear grew darker, right? Because that was like, visually adding on how pollution affects us every day. And I mean, and then they brought out a report, of course, with help of experts, and they called it breathless futures, because, it was so difficult to breathe during the winter. Eventually, I mean, a great end to the story was when the bear went to United Nations General Assembly, the bear met Roger Federer, the tennis player, because he was also surprised to see the framing of pollution to be like so visual was really interesting. Right now, Nepal is working on Thailand too is working on a air pollution bill.
I think that's very interesting to make it visual, right? And to make it relatable. I think that's important, because there's some of the concepts are really things that we can't see, perhaps, right? But when you make it visual, or you make it relatable, like in terms of your messaging to your fellow friends, right? I think that would help a lot, right? Okay, and perhaps just one last question before I go to the Q&A. What would your message be to youths who want to create change and contribute? I'll let each of you answer that. Alex?
I would definitely say that it is possible, and it is in your hands, like to the youth, for them to stand up for what is supposed to be theirs. And I think that they're, like, with everything that's going on around in the world, the youth will be the generation that will be affected the most. So they have every right to stand up for themselves. And I think that if we work together and we work carefully and we draft the message carefully, I think education in general, or youth empowerment in general, could be as important as a lot of the other laws that we see in terms of environmental sustainability.
Thank you. And Sheila?
I think the message is that every step counts. Although we can't predict how much people are inspired by the idea of saving our Mother Earth, I do believe that every step we walk further is a part of our success. As long as you have the passion of alleviating the plastic pollution problems, I think you must have the potential to make changes.
Thank you very much. And Taskin?
I think patience is key, like that they're patient and trying again and again, because right now we are, amidst polycrises, wars and climate crisis and storms. I mean, I was just like, this year had, I think, 11 times more climate disasters than 40 years ago. So I think they might get overwhelmed by the number of priorities they have and the expectations they need to fulfill, but I think patience is the key, and to keep doing that every day.
So patience and perseverance. Don't give up, youths. Don't give up. And Eiren.
For me, the message would be to not be afraid to start from somewhere. As they mentioned earlier, it can get overwhelming. It can get very scary. Sometimes you might feel like you should be doing so much more than what you are doing now. But as they said, every step counts. And what is really important is that you're doing something in the first place. And also to get organized. It's really important to be part of the collective movement because it's a more efficient way to get the message across. You're reaching much larger audiences, and it's done in a way that is that has a system, that's something that is already established, instead of doing it all on your own, like free willy. And also, there are so many ways to get involved. It doesn't have to necessarily be, going to big events or doing whatever. You can just focus on your own talents. You can use, if you're artistic, you can maybe create something for your advocacy. There's just so many different ways. You just have to find one that fits you perfectly, and to just keep doing it, and to never cower in fear, because being in this climate space is actually really, really scary. There's a lot of things that can drive you to fear, but as long as you keep going and you're able to also inspire others to follow your footsteps.
Thank you very much. Wonderful words of encouragement there. Okay, so I'm going to open up the question and answers to the floor now. If you'd like to ask a question to our panelists, yes, please identify yourself, your name.
Hello, I'm Audrey, and I'm a youth climate ambassador from Save the Children Hong Kong. Our youth ambassadors mentioned that funding is being a main obstacle for them to act on their voices. And also the current trend in the society is not providing enough support for youths. And after addressing the problem, I would like to ask, how can adults and professionals provide support and resources to the teenagers who are passionate in advocating change? And also, aside, may media also act as a tool to help youth to reach the assistance that they need? Thank you.
Anyone? Yeah, Alex? I like calling him.
Youth empowerment right there. Well, to answer your question, I agree, and that's kind of why I do the organization that I do, because I think that having a platform, and I actually did my thesis on youth engagement to save endangered species. And one of the things that I found was that if you want to empower, you want to engage youth, you have to build a environment around them that allows them to do so. And I completely agree. And I personally think that education or sustainability or empowerment should be in schools, and it should be as important as math, as science, as PE, as everything else, because now we're going into a stage where we cannot hope that nature is going to be like it was 100 years ago. It's almost close to impossible. Now we're trying to preserve it to be how it is as far as we can, and we're trying to adapt. And as we could see with all the natural disasters that we've had, as you mentioned, it's getting more and more and more. Like in Thailand itself, Chiang Rai, as is happening as we speak, biggest floods in the history of the north of Thailand. We've had most boat accidents, most weather accidents, more than ever in this last year from my personal knowledge being in the field. So my point is that putting sustainability into the schools is actually part of adapting and being able to survive and being able to understand how you would react if these problems are coming towards you, because it's actually a lot closer to you than you think. You think that climate change is something that you see on the news, you see is so far away, but as time goes by, especially in Thailand, it just comes closer and closer and closer. Just like air pollution, for example, a lot of people in the north are changing where they live, coming back to Bangkok because they can no longer open the door. As soon as they open the door, they're their child comes out, they have a runny, bleedy nose. They, lives are literally changing at this point. So yeah, so go back to the point is that if we could implement this and make it as serious as every other subject is something that I think is seriously important on a national level.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex. Any other questions? Yes.
So I'm Millie, and I'm also a youth ambassador from Save the Children Hong Kong. And at the years, while I was trying to tackle some problems in my perspective, I would sometimes will get in face something that will stop me, like how to raise the wellness. And sometimes this kind of there are a lot of problems seems cannot be solved currently, and it is really hard to think them through. So I see you guys are all the kind of the youth ambassadors that get to this point, and I wanted to ask from your personal experience, when you get stopped by some ideas or difficulties that you cannot think them through, that you cannot step them over and overcome them, how do you solve them?
Right. So insurmountable challenges. How anybody? Eiren?
I think it's important to think back to why you were doing this in the first place, because we have to be realistic. We don't always have all the answers. So these kinds of challenges are sure to come and sure to, stop us at some point. But if we remind ourselves of why or who we are fighting for, what are we fighting against, and we realize the kind of importance, the kind of work that we do has, or that its impact on, whatever advocacy that you have, it's enough to keep you going. So it's not about directly finding the solution. It's more of continuously working on finding it instead of, being impatient enough and hoping that you get the answer right away. It's more of never stopping and just continue fighting for your people, fighting for your advocacy.
Thank you. Thank you. We have time for one more question. Oh, okay. Sure. We have two questions. Yes. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Christian from Cora Nonprofit Philippines. So I've seen a lot of promising youth-led movements emerge, but many struggle to sustain their momentum for various reasons, such as lack of funding, lack of support, may it be locally or within their community, or lack of technical capacity, among others. And with your experiences, what recommendations can you share or provide to our young leaders out there on how they can effectively maintain the momentum, sustain their efforts, and keep climate change and plastic problem at the forefront of public discourse?
All right. I think Taskin, maybe you could take this question.
Yeah, I think perseverance, patience, both are really important. I think there is a famous quote by someone called Phil Knight. He's the founder of Nike. So he said, so his investors at one point asked him, "Do you think it will work?" He said, "No, it could fail, but I don't think it will." So by which I mean, that he had the belief to keep going without having a certain future, but he was able to imagine that things will fall in place if enough effort was taken, and if they were able to kind of adapt to the changing dynamics of the world, commerce, everything you can. So likewise, I would say, if you persevere and kind of keep it on the top of your own priority, only then you can imagine others will prioritize it as well. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you very much. And yes, one last question over there.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Alex Kaufman. I'm an ESG consultant to the Maldives with the UNDP. Actually, my question, I guess it's Philippine specific, because I just watched a very enlightening video about Quezon City. Eiren, are you familiar with the program?
A little bit, yes.
Okay. I'm just curious if she communicated to the youth, and if that was so successful, did they engage with the youth in that locality, or is it really just how can I say, a little bit of propaganda, from the government side?
From what I've experienced personally in Quezon City, they do like to engage a lot with the youths, especially student councils that are within Quezon City. Quezon City is actually one of the most successful cities when it comes to the plastic ban. So as mentioned earlier, they started the ban a few years back, but in other cities, they're only starting now, and there are still some exemptions to that, except for Quezon City. So they actually have been successful when it comes to banning plastics and giving other kinds of alternatives instead. Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay, just one more question. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. We heard a lot yesterday and today about the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee on Plastic Pollution. I was wondering what's your role in this upcoming INC5, and if you actually have collaborated with the Global Youth Youth Coalition on Plastic Pollution as well. And since you are the representative from Asia, what will you be doing during INC5? Thank you.
Maybe you can share from Save the Children's perspective.
Yeah, I think we are engaging with regional ARCOI, regional youth climate group, to kind of ensure that they are being consulted as well through other documents like the ASEAN Declaration and different bills in different countries that are existing. We are trying to kind of make a short summary of the expectations from young people's side for this upcoming bill. But we haven't engaged at the INC5 level as yet. We are in a preparation stage. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time. Can we please give all of them a round of applause, please? Yeah. Wonderful discussion. Okay, so we're going to let you take action yourself now. So can we have the next slide? And it's coming. There we go. Okay, so what we'd like you to do is, take in whatever that you've heard, whatever that you've learned today. You can take a picture of this slide, right? And then put it on the social media, on your own platforms, and write in your story or your angle or your message that you like your audiences to know. And hashtag #MyUNEP_SOS message, and you can tag UNEP as well. Okay? All right, so thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time. Thank you.